Hey guys, Tarke here. I'm going to do a very quick spoiler-free review of the beta so far before I run out to vote, hence why I'm all dressed up. I've got like 10-20 minutes to roll this, so let's just knock this out nice and quick. So, gut reaction, without going to any spoilers, from a pure like balanced boss point of view, Act 5, in my opinion, is near perfect. Now, there are two scary bosses in Act 5, damage-wise, that people seem to be kind of mixed on. A lot of people are saying that these bosses are really scary, they're like really overtuned, they're super sketchy. They're really not that bad in my opinion. The first one has a few attacks which are fairly like ignorable, and then one or two which if you mess up hit you pretty hard. This is mostly the case if people have only done these fights like once, they're not used to the telegraphs, they've gone through like a fairly safe like 1 through 4, that's very well known. So everything seems new, it seems super scary. You don't need to nerf the Act 5 bosses, they are fine. They hit for about 1.5k with just random abilities here and there. Nothing ever hit me close to 2k HP, and at the time I was doing like 1.6k max HP tops with maybe an enfeeble blasphemy. That was that, and I was completely and utterly fine, and that was for Act 5. To give you a concept of level-wise, probably like 42-ish, 43. Going through it, slightly underleveled, completely fine, wasn't really that sketchy. Act 6. Now, Act 6 is where it starts to get kind of difficult. Now, visually, thematically, storyline-wise, linear-wise, it's all fine. However, the bosses in Act 6 are incredibly undertuned. I would show footage, but I know some people really don't want stuff being spoiled, so we'll just go through it. To give you a basic idea, I started this thing, it was called the face tank test. Like this for every single mini-boss and like main boss that we have in the beta, which is currently just Acts 1 through 7. And you went from Act 5, where if I face tanked mechanics, I'd be getting, you know, close to killed, being hit for like 89% of my HP, getting hit for like 1 to 1.5k hits. And then against most of the mobs in Act 6, they would be struggling to hit me for 100, 200. There is one particular unique named mob, I don't know if it was broken, and it just autos you. And I'm like, why is this a named mob? Why does it have its own custom model? Like, it had its own unique model. I don't know if we'll see it in the later acts, 8, 9, 10. But it had its own completely unique rendered 3D model, its own unique name tag, and it just autos. And it was autoing me for like 100, if that. I was literally stood right in front of it, and I was just like naturally out-regenning its damage with just a Blasphemy and Feeble, and like probably 1.8% regen on the tree at the time. It was doing absolutely nothing to me. The final act boss of Act 6, again I do the face tank test, I stand, I turret, Scorch Ray. I did not move from a single mechanic. Anyone who's watched the Brine King fight knows that all the crazy stuff that happens during that. I face tanked literally every single mechanic, not even close to being threatened. Really, it needs to be tuned up, especially after how great Act 5 is. Act 4 is still kind of scary for a lot of players. So from like Act 4, especially if you're like, this is a complete league start, you haven't got any fancy gear, there are 1 or 2 scary moments in Act 4 if you, mess up. They can screw you up. Act 5 especially, Act 5 is even scarier. So it's like, oh, cool. And then Act 6 is just kind of like go back to like pre-Act 4 difficulty. It seems really weird. I don't know if it's a scaling thing, like whatever. Basically, Act 6 bosses need to be a bit scarier. Act 7, again, visually perfect, linear-wise. It was pretty good. I liked it all. There were 1 or 2 quests which felt kind of almost like MMO filler quests. Anyone who did the Beacon quest in Act 6 knows what I'm talking about, and anyone who did the collect the chest quest, you know what I mean. There's something that just, it feels like filler, and it's kind of like, we need to fill this thing out, we're going to just put some arbitrary MMO style design, which seems kind of weird because we haven't really had that at all with previous ARPG stuff, with Path of Exile anyway. Otherwise, it all looks good. Visually, it's all great. Bosses, much more interesting. Visually, very interesting. The rooms are all interesting. Mechanically, all great. There's 1 or 2 optional bosses, which are substantially harder than everything you previously faced in Act 6 and main storyline stuff. Multiple of the main storyline Act 7 bosses are, again, really disappointing, though. They just weren't touching me. You just, like, you face tank all the mechanics, they do nothing. The Malagara fight, this isn't a spoiler, it's been shown no times that he'll be in there. He's an example of a slang which is, it's very nearly a good fight. One of his mechanics is really scary and hits really hard. The rest is a complete joke. And the problem with mechanics like that is you actually go through the fight going, this does nothing, face tank, face tank, face tank, this does nothing, this does nothing. He then suddenly does his one move, which is very sudden, not that well telegraphed, and then it nearly one-shots you. Like, that is, like, it feels cheap. If the whole thing was super punishing, and you really learn to respect, like, the Act 5 bosses, you really learn to respect them because everything hurts. That's good. That's, like, good design. When you have it where it's, like, nothing, random one-shot, that isn't intuitive. That doesn't make sense. It's not, like, clearly telegraphed. It's just, no, that's not good. The Malagari fight, very nearly good. If all the X7 bosses kind of had his level of potential damage, I think it'd be great. The final boss of Act 7, Arakali, perfect. It's a case where it's actually a pretty straightforward boss, very well telegraphed, very easy to take no damage at all during the entire fight. If you mess up and take like 2 hits though, you will get 1 shot. That is like the design that we want. It's not like a Zaro random win/hit you, even though you definitely weren't in it. If you get hit by the certain telegraphs in that fight, you got hit. There is no like screwing around with it. The only slightly annoying thing about that fight is there's a lot of phases. If you have enough damage, you can skip the phase. Currently in the beta, we only have up to Act 7, and I finished it at level 53, and the first tier of maps is 68. So I had to grind from 53 to 68. I was just farming this one boss over and over and over again. And I found that I could quite easily skip most of the phases, but sometimes it would bug out, like you'd get her to like a 1%, she'd then do like an animation, then come back, and then she's back to 90%, and then other times you just like completely kill it in one shot. It's really weird. A lot of the fights, nearly all of them, when you really think about boss-wise, have these like phasing things, which you can pseudo skip. Now, this isn't that big of an issue, you think, but considering this was like my first character of the league, my first time ever with the bosses, I was leveling with Scorching Ray, with, yeah, okay, I would have, at that point in the character, I would have had, you know, EE, Ellie Overload, maybe 1, 2 damage clusters. So come up through this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe that's quite a lot to have it early on with EO and EE, but for the amount of investment I had in my character with no gear, it felt way too easy. And so far, I just want to say, really great, but please make the bosses consistently challenging, because while you've gone through this effort to make these amazing fights, you don't want to be a complete and utter joke on your first playthrough, because if they're a joke on your first playthrough, the second we actually will become experienced with them, the second we actually have like 1 or 2 leveling items, once we have like full 4 links, not like random janky 2-3 link setups, it's just going to become completely and utterly trivial, and these bosses don't deserve that. And just from like a base gameplay system, doesn't make sense. The whole new Pantheon system is like you defeat these mighty gods and you steal those powers. It feels weird as a system where the mighty gods are like easier than white mobs. When like random white mobs, like a pack of like 3 white mobs hits you harder than a final god boss, that's clearly like not quite right there. Maybe I lucked out, maybe I just made the perfect build, but I doubt that. Anyway, I'm going to go vote now, but these are my initial reactions on the beta thus far. Seems good. I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Bye-bye.